Just got back from Prague, which was a great trip, but the day's poker that came at the start of it was a bit of a yuck day. But even the yuckiest of days are going to throw up a couple of very interesting hands that are all worth thinking about. And I've got two. The first comes in the second level of the day. Fishy, the solid player raises in mid position, fishy player calls the button, so I decide to peel with Queen Jack of clubs from the small blind. Flop is ace of clubs, eight of clubs, six of hearts, so I flop the second nut flush draw. I check, solid player bet 650, the fishy player calls, so I'm definitely calling with the second nut flush draw. Even at this point, it feels like the solid player, the initial aggressor, has definitely got at least a good piece of the board, and I just felt that maybe he was pretty strong here, but all the more reason to call. Obviously, turn is a blank 9 to now give me a gut shot as well, and a 10 would be an absolutely gin card. I check solid player bet 1600 into like 2500. Fishy player gets out of the way. And now I've definitely got the odds to call, let alone the implied odds to call, and so call was 1600, and see a river which is a club, but the 8 of clubs for a board of ace, 8, 6, 2 clubs, 9, 8 of clubs to pair the board. I'm looking at a pot of 6,000 and decide to bet 2,000. Why? Because I'm pretty sure that if I get raised here, then I can probably be making a good laydown. This is one spot where live poker is very different to internet poker. On the internet, I could never make that bet and hope to lay down because A, I've telegraphed that my hand is pretty marginal and a raise might take me off it, and B, people are actually going to value raise with far less. People might value raise any flush there on the internet. Live poker happens very differently, and that wasn't going to happen, especially with a solid player. So when I bet 2,000, he insta reached for chips, it didn't feel good. He then took them back, thought for a while, but eventually made it 8,500, so 6,500 more. And I had to go into a tank, but it was a tank where I kind of knew which way I was going to emerge from it. The first thing to check in any situation like that is, am I beating just a bluff, or is there more there that can beat, i.e. can he value bet less? And as I say, a solid player like that in live poker just doesn't make that kind of value raise on a paired board if he's got a low flush or something like that. So I was pretty sure all I could beat was a bluff, and having 5 3 streets, especially with another fishy player in the pot, then that didn't feel likely at all. So I laid it down feeling pretty confident that it must be a full house, and probably aces full actually. And when the table broke a couple of hours later, he was kind enough to tell me that he did have pocket aces, which obviously isn't necessarily true, but there didn't seem to be too much reason to lie. So that was pleasing at least. A pot which was less pleasing, I also had Queen Jack and also in the small blind. And this time the fishy player raises on the button to 450, I peel in the big blind plays. Flop is ace, 10, 8 rainbow, so it's a nice flop because I flopped the double gutter. Check, big blind checks, he bets 800 into like 1200. I'm definitely calling as does the big blind. Turn 9 is the absolute gin for ace, 10, 9, 8, and I've got Queen Jack. I lead out 2500 into 4000. Solid kind of German player in the big blind, thinks for ages and eventually makes the call. Fishy player is kind of short stack, looks a bit frustrated and makes the call. So the board is ace, 10, 9, 8, and a second spade has come on the turn. So I'm thinking, no, just a blank 6 or something on the river. Well, a blank queen didn't actually look too bad, but of course puts Swarter straight out there for ace, queen, 10, 9, 8. It's a big decision for me now, how much to value bet into a 10k pot with two-way action. It's actually a really complicated spot. There's loads of scenarios to think through. But one that's the most likely is that the German guy probably has a jack in his hand in the big blind and we're splitting. So what bet can I make that he will know to flat call, hoping for a split pot, and then the fishy player might also side flat call with 2 pair or a set or a hand like that. I decided on 4,000 and it seemed to be going well as the big blind player thought for a long time and eventually flat called. I was pretty sure that would be a jack. It definitely wasn't king jack. Comes out to the fishy player who looks frustrated, but eventually actually playing only 13,000 picks all his chips up and puts in the 9k more, and that really looked like just a jack. It definitely wasn't king jack, and obviously it wasn't any less than that. So what's the right move in this spot where I know I bet 4,000, solid player in the big blind calls the 4,000, another guy moves in for 9,000 more. Obviously I have to call, and that I do, and as soon as I call I realise my mistake. What's the best move? Well, if the guy on the button has got king jack, I'm paying him off anyway, but what I can be sure about is the big blind definitely hasn't, so why not reship all in for 30k more, and at least try to nick some part of the split pot, which would have netted me kind of like 3,000 more or something like that. Instead, I don't really think about it too much and call the 9,000, and now the German guy has a massive sire, massive tank, and also calls the 9,000. The hands are pretty disgusting. The button player's got pocket jacks for a river straight. The German guy hand is even more cringeworthy because it's Jack 7 for what was the second that's straight on the turn and got absolutely saved by a queen on the river. But the hand is just a prime example of the way you can't let any emotions come into play at all. And I very rarely do, but definitely when that river card came and the action went as it did, I was feeling slightly sorry for myself that I turned the nuts into a three-way split pot. But even that slightest emotion of feeling sorry for myself may just have hindered me in finding the correct play there. And so it's just a wonderful lesson that you really have to play without your emotions at all. It's not a game to feel sorry for yourself in. That was about Prague, and that's just about it for the year, apart from a tournament at Dust Till Dawn just before Christmas. A couple of weeks rest and back to normal life I'm really looking forward to before then, but I'm sure when Dust Till Dawn comes up I'll be buzzing for that, so there'll be a video soon. Okay.